Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will read the call.
Dear Supervisor, please be advised that the Trumpealeau County Board of Supervisors will meet at 7 p.m. on February 20th, 2023 in the County Board Room. All County Board members' claims are due in the County Clerk's office by noon on February 3rd, 2023, so they can be prepared for Audit Committee approval. Sincerely, Paul Severson, County Clerk.
Roll call.
Bridget Turner.
Here.
Stacy Klein.
Here.
Richard Seisha.
Here.
Lori Severson.
Here.
Andy Todd. Here. Heather Fritsch.
Here.
Kevin Adams.
Here.
Dick Miller.
Here.
David Orsh.
Here.
John Austin.
Here.
Dawn Waldera.
Here.
Robert Becker.
Here.
Dan Schreiner.
Here.
Kellen Nelson.
Here.
David Larson.
Here.
Jeannie Nutter.
Here.
Ron Johnson.
Here.
17-0.
Okay, I certify the open meeting law requirements have been met with proper posting and notification.
Yes.
We have an 11-item agenda. Looking for approval. Motion from Mr. Seisha, second by Ms. Nutter. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, it's carried. Minutes, looking for approval from the January 22 or 2023 meeting.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, second by Bridget Turner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, opposed? Sorry about that. Anybody against it? Nope, it's carried. Appearances. I don't see Brian there yet.
He's going to be here in person.
Oh, okay, then we'll just go on to quarterly update from John. Are you up and at 'em?
I'm ready. Dave has a question.
Oh,
Chair,
yeah.
there's actually 2 sets of minutes in there. Did we approve both sets or just one?
Oh,
The fourth and the.
oh,
I said yes.
I read them too and I didn't even pay attention. Yeah, we got the January 4th and the January 16th meeting. Is that amended on the agenda that we approve them both?
Johnson and Turner.
Johnson and Turner is okay with you guys? Approve them both?
They were both January.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we'll go on with Mr. District Attorney, John Seisha.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Good to be with you guys again. I'm going to be sending around the 2022 year-end totals for case filings for the Trempealeau County District Attorney's Office. This kind of puts in table form annual case filings since 2015, so you can kind of compare where we're at year on year from 2022 back to 15. Looking at these numbers, 2022 lined up pretty squarely with kind of normal historical years. So we had 232 felony case filings. That's similar to 2020, where we had 205, 2019 we had 225, 2018 we had 233. So kind of right around the normal ballpark average for felony case filings. 2021 was the outlier. In 2021, we had 322 felony case filings. I think I've kind of been reflecting on what the reason for that spike was, and I think that in 2022 in 2021, I was very aggressive about kind of clearing some backlog of cases, kind of undated referrals, and so I think that drove up the numbers. Also, it just seemed as though we had more activity in 2021 for whatever reason, maybe due to people's attitudes kind of coming out of quarantine and all the lockdowns and everything. But we had 2021 was really an exceptional year. I think we're busy enough. If we kind of keep numbers around this 230 felony filing a year mark, I hope we don't kind of get back to 2021 numbers anytime soon. But yeah, if you look at these numbers, 21 was kind of an outlier, well, hopefully, and 2022 is pretty consistent with kind of normal recent numbers. So in total, we filed, or we received around or over 1,100 referrals of various types. Those include citations, those include DHS referrals, delinquencies, felony matters, misdemeanor matters, and everything in between. So this means that we're effectively reviewing, my assistant and I are reviewing multiple cases, multiple police reports per day in order to kind of make these filings happen. So we're busy. We're still keeping at it, and I think that this next year is going to be pretty consistent, hopefully, with where we were at last year, maybe a little higher. If you guys have any questions about this, I'm always happy to talk about it. I'm going to keep this short. This is kind of my longest section. I've got two other updates. Second update is since last I spoke with you all, we've hired a new diversion coordinator. Wayna Pitchka, who was a social worker with Trumpealeau County DHS for decades, transitioned into my office to be our diversion coordinator for the last couple of years of his career. He is now retired and is enjoying retirement, and we were able to hire a replacement for him. We've hired Megan Peterson, who was a correctional officer in the jail for 11 and a half years prior to accepting the job as diversion coordinator. She's been in the position for about a month now, and she's really doing excellent work. She's very sharp, has ample criminal justice system experience, and I think that she's going to take the program in kind of new and exciting directions. I'm really thrilled to have her in that position, and thrilled to kind of watch how she wants to kind of develop the program. So that's a new and exciting development in my office. And finally, I've been reflecting on what how my assistant and I, Mike Diaz, and I could be more effective in the community. We're busy, we have a lot of cases, but it's always worthwhile to sort of pause to reflect on what we could do to be more effective. And something that's really been weighing on me lately, and frankly, it's not a new issue, it's not something that I just started thinking about, but something that I've been thinking about quite a bit lately is the fact that we have so many children who stopped going to school in person during kind of COVID times, during the pandemic, and who never went back. These kids, some of them transitioned formally to online education. Some of them did not. Some of them are trying to pursue education one way or another. Some of them did not. And so now more than ever, we have children in this community who are left to their own devices, and sometimes I mean that literally in the sense that they just sit on their phones or computers all day and are not going to school, don't have any oversight through the school system, and I'm concerned about that. I think it's something that we all should be concerned about, and it's my goal this year to along with DHS partners, law enforcement partners, and school partners, talk about this issue and really kind of bring it to the fore, to figure out what we can do in a cost-effective manner to try to get to the bottom of this, to the extent that we're able. This has always been a challenging issue for system actors, law enforcement, school folks, DHS. This has always been a thorny issue because the issues that inform truancy are complex. It's parenting issues, it's school dynamics for the child, it's a host of factors. It's sometimes it's substance use, both either by a juvenile or by a parent. The issues are complex and they're thorny. Very rarely is it the case that truancy is just a result of a kid with a bad attitude or something easy or something simple. So I don't have anything discrete to discuss tonight, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. This is something I'm talking about with DHS. It's something I'm talking about with our Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and hopefully by the next time I'm in front of you for an update, I'll be able to kind of share with you where we're headed on this. But I raise it tonight just to let you know that this is going to be a priority for me this year, thinking about how we can help these families and help these kids who really fell off the map after kind of with all the calamity and kind of shakeup of the schooling system in the last couple of years. We want to help get these kids back on track. So that's my goal for 2023 and beyond, frankly. But I'm going to be focusing energy and attention on this, and I may be talking to some of you guys about what we can do to try to kind of raise awareness of this issue and to act on it. So those are my 3 points. Ms. Walder, do you have a question? Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I wondered 2 things. Could you define or explain what each of the case filings are? I know the first one are felonies.
Yep, certainly. So CF is felony, which in a felony is a criminal offense that is punishable by over 1 year in confinement. A misdemeanor is a criminal offense that's punishable by up to 1 year in the county jail. Just so you're aware, a lot of these, a criminal felony referral often entails misdemeanor offenses additionally, but cases are counted kind of by their highest level of offense. So a lot of these 232 felonies also have misdemeanors or additional felonies taking along with them, but they're only counted once, and they're only counted by their highest offense level. So CM is criminal misdemeanor, CT is criminal traffic. Those are filings that only entail a criminal traffic offense. Usually that means an operating while intoxicated related offense, or operating with restricted controlled substance related offense, or operating after revocation when you get your driver's license taken away after you get convicted of an OWI. So those are CTs. FOs are forfeitures. Forfeitures are violations that are punishable only by a money penalty and not the prospect of confinement, jail time. So, speeding, for example, is probably the most common forfeiture offense that comes through the office. Traffic. Actually, yes, traffic. I guess these are broken down. So FOs are non-speeding related, non-traffic related offenses. So possession of THC. If it's not charged criminally, it can be charged as a violation of Trempealeau County ordinance, or it's a low-level theft or something can be charged with that. Trespassing to land. These types of offenses that don't get charged criminally, but are kind of criminal related. TR are traffic matters, speeding, following too close, etc. JV are delinquency cases, and in children in need of protection and services cases. So those are truancies sometimes. Juvenile delinquencies, so kids engaging in behavior that would be criminal if they were an adult, and kind of uncontrollable juveniles, so children with needs that can't be met because they're uncontrollable. That's the statutory language. And finally, JC is children in need of protection and services, like CPS-related cases. So generally, a child who's being abused or neglected by parent or caregiver, that's a JC type case.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
For future, I just wonder if those could be spelled out for the team, unless anyone else feels differently. I just know that when you brought this last time, I had to ask the same question, and I just didn't remember.
No,
So it's
happy
just a
to
thought.
do it. I wasn't, unfortunately, sometimes I forget that.
It's not my language.
Well, yeah. I mean, these are terms that I look at literally every day, all
Right.
day. So yeah, I will note that, and next time I'll make it a little clearer.
Thank
But,
you. My second question was where the truancy cases fell,
Yeah.
but you answered that by saying it's in the JV grouping.
Yeah, and so truancy is an interesting issue because it can be dealt with in a number of different ways. There's a truancy citation, so it's possible to deal with truancy only as a money penalty. You give the kid a ticket for not going to school. Generally, that's not super effective, particularly with younger children, because they're just not going to pay it. And so there's not a lot of good that comes out of giving a 14-year-old who's not going to school a $200 ticket. It's not particularly effective in most cases. Sometimes you give a kid a ticket, and then the parent thinks they're going to have to shoulder that burden, or they understand that they'll have to shoulder the burden, and then they start kind of getting motivated to get the kid to school. Sometimes that works, usually not so much. Ultimately, truancies can be addressed through Department of Human Services supervision. Obviously, Department of Human Services has limited resources and limited bandwidth. We unfortunately, we probably can't do a formal filing on every truant in Trempealeau County. And so that's kind of part of the strategy here. Part of the reason I want to raise this to everybody's attention is to think about, what else can we do other than just filing a juvenile in need of protection services case in every truancy matter. What else can we do? Maybe we're going to have to file more juvenile in need of protection services cases, but we should also be thinking about what else can we do? What other resources are available? Whether that's kind of wraparound programs, whether it's school social workers, guidance counselors, teen court style programs. I want to sit down and think with kind of other system actors about what we can do to kind of get to the bottom of this. So yeah, but truancy filings are under that JV category.
Thank you.
And I would guess that many truancy cases never even come to anybody's attention because these kids are just lost.
Yes.
And the school doesn't, nobody can do anything. And so those numbers probably are not a true reflection.
I think you're right, Jeannie.
Mm-hmm. Nationwide, they talk about thousands and thousands of children who are lost.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. Just this evening, I was given a referral. It's a delinquency-related referral on a young person who, left the school system for whatever reason at age 11, and now they are coming back into the system with a delinquency-related offense, and it's the type of behavior that if this behavior was engaged in by an adult, all of us would want this person sent to confinement for an extended period of time. And this person somehow was off the radar, from age 11 to age 16. And this, I was planning on talking about truancy before I read that referral, but it really kind of underscored for me the need to bring this up. It's tragic when this happens, because what's in store for these kids who don't even get a high school education? What's in store? I can't imagine that they have the foundation, the emotional, the practical, the sort of intellectual foundation to do their most productive work after high school, or once they reach adulthood, if they don't have a high school diploma. These kids are going to be truly harmed by not having that school experience. So yeah, it's really top of mind. Yeah, Jeannie.
And just to follow up, I just really appreciate your dedication to this, and I love the idea of looking at teen court or truancy courts, because those have been very successful in the past. And I know we have everybody spread so thin, but I believe this is really one of our most critical issues, because we can't have these kids just lost.
Yeah.
We don't even know where they are, what they're doing, or if they're healthy, or if they're eating or sleeping or living someplace.
Yeah. It's I think back to one of the most tragic and disturbing child sexual assault related case I had earlier in my career, and in that case also involved kids who just kind of dropped off the map. You know, they were changing counties, you know, kind of ducking CPS, and eventually they dropped off the map, and those kids grew up in a household of horrific abuse with no one having any idea that they were in the county. You know, whatever, and they weren't just in Trempealeau County, but they were here and elsewhere. You know, I don't know what the answer is at this point, but I think it's an all hands on deck sort of approach to to trying to intervene meaningfully in these situations.
And I think there's a lot of interest in doing something, and I hope that it happens.
I hope so too.
If I have anything, if I'm involved, I'll do my best. But I mean, these kids are my thing.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your interest, and I'll be following up with you. I'm sure in the weeks and months ahead. So, all right. Does anyone else have any? Yep, Mr. Miller.
Just a quick question, John. Do you have any idea, since you're on the education here, do you have any idea of the 232 cases, felony cases, how many of these individuals had a high school education?
You know, I don't offhand, and I don't know if I could get that information easily. You know, this is something that we were talking about, though, in our recent CJCC meeting, is kind of data collection on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not everyone who comes into the jail is going to want to fill out a questionnaire, but I think there is something that we could do to try to collect more data from folks who are coming into the system about, you know, who they are, what their background is, and actually, I think the Compass evaluation.
I would think the Compass would have that information.
Yeah.
The last grade they completed in school.
Yeah, and so I think I'll note. So the county was awarded a grant from Department of Justice, or from Treatment Assistant Diversion through the Department of Justice to fund our treatment court, and also to fund a kind of new type of kind of diversion programming. I think something I talked about with DOJ is the possibility of kind of getting some funding to pay for a person to come in and do Compass assessments, and you know, maybe this is kind of one way that some of that grant money can be used, kind of to facilitate diversion-related things. But I think it's a great question. I don't have the short answer is, unfortunately, I don't have the answer. I wish I did.
And we're a lot of talk about Compass. If you just Google that, you'll get a ton of information about what Compass is and how it was developed and what its purpose is.
Compass isn't perfect, but it's use. I mean, it's better than nothing.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns?
Hearing none, thanks, John.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
We'll go to the sheriff, Mr. Severson, or Semison. Whoops. It's been a bad day.
I answered anything,
It's
so.
been a bad day for
Yeah.
names.
Nothing from
Yeah,
It's been a bad day for names.
so.
We got Ron Anderson over here.
Yeah, well, I'd be a liar if I didn't call somebody a name now and then too, but.
That was a nice name, though.
So mine will be just a couple minutes longer than normal. I'm going to talk a little bit about the statistics like I normally do. And then just within the hour or two before the meeting, I sent an email to all of you with the 2022 annual report. There's kind of some strategy there. I'd be here all night if I'd have gave it to you a week ago because you'd had all kinds of questions then. But anyway, that's not the case. It's just it was my procrastination in getting it finalized and ready to go. So go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to hit some highlights of it, but I'll ask that you read it on your leisure. And if, I suspect you may come up with some questions, and you can email those questions to me. If I get questions, I'll respond to the whole board with the answers, but only email me when you have that question. I think there could be some open meetings violations if we don't do it that way. So, but To get started, I'll just do the typical statistical information that I've come across here from the months of November, December, and January. In that time period, we answered 3,211 calls for service to county residents. That doesn't include the calls that come in for the cities and the villages. And that's compared to 3,240 in the prior quarter, so that's very close. And I would expect that that's typical on all quarters. Some crime data, death investigations. We did 11 death investigations versus 9 from the previous quarter. One of those investigations we did was an inmate in the La Crosse County Jail that was found deceased, so we did the investigation there for them. And one is a possible overdose, has not been confirmed yet. We're still waiting for toxicology to come back, but it's on its face value, it looks like it's an overdose death. Drug abuse violations, 42 for the quarter versus 40 for the previous quarter. Simple assault, what you commonly refer to as disorderly conducts, 27 this quarter versus 23. We had 1 burglary versus 3 the quarter before, 6 thefts versus 8, and then 1 motor vehicle stolen versus 4 from the previous quarter. So those numbers are all pretty consistent. Crash data, we had 140 car deer accidents in the months of November, December, and January. As expected, that's down from 193 in the 3 months prior to that. Property damage, we had 78 property damage crashes versus 48 in the previous quarter, and that's typical because the roads started getting bad. So we respond to more of those. Most of them are minor fender benders, but it doesn't take much to get over that $1,000 threshold anymore that where the reporting is required. We had 13 injury accidents versus 18 in the previous quarter, and no fatalities in this quarter. 139 citations were issued by my deputies versus 126 previously. 16 non-traffic citations, and that's what John was alluding to when you talk about trespassing or maybe your lower level thefts or whatever a county ordinance violation may be. That's what we call them, as non-traffic citations. It's an NTC form that we send in, and we had 16 of those versus 14 in the previous quarter. Warnings, very close, 286 versus 288. Chapter 51s are our mental health commitments. These are not all commitments. These are all cases where we were called to evaluate, and it either did or didn't result in a commitment. There were 21 of those in the 3-month period versus 20 from the quarter before. This is the staggering differences when I talk about jail numbers here now. Today, we have 46 inmates in our custody. Previous quarter, we were at 35. So there's a significant jump in our jail population. We have 12 in out-of-county jails right now under contract versus 4 in the previous quarter. We have 1 on EM versus 5 in the previous quarter. We have 1 in another jail that's non-contracted. They're getting credit for time served here while they're serving time for another county. We have 1 of those. And we have 32 in our jail today. That is our maximum capacity. And matter of fact, our capacity is 30. So at some point today, somebody was booked in and 1 was booked out and 2 were booked out. So we can only have 30 in our custody at any given time. So those numbers are pre-2019 even before I was sheriff. We haven't seen numbers like this since then. And at that time, we were up around 50, so we're approaching, but not yet at the highs from the mid-teens. So one thing I did notice is there's a number of higher cash bonds on those folks that are in our jail, and that's part of the reason we have more. We've had some pretty serious offenses occur in this county that have resulted in some higher cash bonds, ranging from $5,000 all the way up to $100,000. So it's pretty significant. Some vacant positions. Last quarter, I proudly stood here and said I didn't have any open at that time. I was mistaken. I had a traffic vacancy that was occurring because of a chief deputy retired back in the May, and it just takes a long time to get everything back in place. So, but today I got 5 today. So the very day after the last county board meeting where I presented back in November, I had a dispatcher resign. So I now have 2 openings in a jail. And one was the person John alluded to that went to the DA's office, and another one is a resignation. 2 resignations in dispatch. One went on to become a police chief in another city, and one after training a period of time just decided that wasn't the right job, and that's perfectly understandable. That happens. So. And then the one patrol position that we'll be filling here shortly now, because we've done all the steps from chief deputy on down as the moves came. So that's the statistics for that quarter. Any questions on any of those? I know I kind of rattled through them fast, but and then what's that?
What's the difference between a burglary and a theft?
A theft can be a pickpocket, they call it. If someone were to leave, if I were to take Rick's phone and leave, that's a theft.
I wouldn't even squeal on you.
So, but if this is Rick's house and I break into Rick's house and take his phone, that is now a burglary. The burglary is unlawful entry to a structure with the intent to commit a felony. That's a burglary. Thefts are usually the minor ones. So,
the other question I had is, you've been training deputies and jailers too, I'm sure, go to some sort of training. Do you have a time they have to serve to pay for this cost of training, like a year's time? Or
no.
So somebody could go to training and as soon as they get qualified, leave and go to a different county if they wanted to?
So for dispatch, it isn't quite so bad. There's a couple of weeks of emergency medical dispatch training that they have to attain. It's not a real expensive thing. They do it on when they're working. But in the jail, we send a jailer to a 4-week or a 5-week, I think it's 200 hours, certification training, and they have to have that within their first year of employment. So typically we get them in there, they start field training, then we send them off for 5 straight weeks of training. You pay them their wages, the meals, you got the travel expenses, and then there's a fee for the course as well. Some of it is reimbursed by the Department of Justice, but not all of it. And if they leave at before, any time within that year, we're out. That's the cost that we're out. So, same with traffic. Unfortunately, at this point, we may be changing the way we do things, but right now, they have to be certified to apply for a traffic position, so that's an expense that's already taken care of. With a lack of applicants lately, we may have to rethink that and have to start certifying, and then that's where we're going to run into that very issue too. So I don't know if there's counties out there that have contingencies, sign-on contingencies. If there is, maybe it's something to look at, because that's some significant costs.
Right. With the higher number of contracts that are going out, higher than normal, of course, you can't budget for that. But just to throw out a good note for the jail, that's going to be a savings for us when the jail does open back up, because we got to pay out that money to those other jails, correct?
Right, yeah. So right now, there's $150,000 annually in my budget for out-of-county housing. We don't always use that, but it's always levied, and what we don't use comes back to the general fund. But that comes off the budget the day we open. So it automatically drops $150,000. Some other peripheral expenses, such as meals and laundry, those are going to rise, but it's not in proportion. Right, it's not significant.
So this year, or as of right now, we have higher numbers that could affect our budget by the end of the year if it maintains this, correct?
Yep. I didn't crunch the numbers, but in 4 years of doing this, I think we are going to be running into trouble when we start getting up around anywhere from 15 to 20 out of county at any given time. I did come back in my first year and ask for an additional 80,000 to put us at 230,000 for that year. When the numbers are all done, it was really only at 170,000. And those are some pretty high numbers. So it would have to be a significant and prolonged increase in order for the budget to be affected.
Okay. All right, thanks.
So I'm just going to hit some highlights of this report. Again, you'll all see it, and I want you to read through it, and there'll be time for questions, both right after we're done here, and you can email me questions if you have. Very top line, I think, is a highlight, a great highlight. We have 0 fatalities in our county for motor vehicles in 2022. In 2019, that year we reported 0, but it's a little bit of a false number because a crash that occurred in October resulted in the driver died after the first of the next year. So it's not technically a traffic fatality, but it's not exactly a 0 either. So we truly have 0 fatalities for 2022. The first 5 or 6 pages you'll see in the report, those are just some of the highlights of the year. A lot of them are crashes, but some of them are the more major cases that come in. And the very first one listed, January 7th. If you remember last year, I talked about this large drug investigation that involved multiple agencies all the way up to the federal government and Puerto Rico and a little bit of Colombia, resulted in the arrest of 3 parties from Independence. In January, those 3 were indicted, and they were just recently sentenced. So, but we're being told that this case is now expanded into Puerto Rico, boots on the ground, and into South America. It's got to be that large a case. And without getting in any detail, it's come back to us on follow-up for something else that's going on right now. So very large case. 3 indictments is huge for Trempealeau County, I think. So in February last year, the Eau Claire County Sheriff's Office had a high-speed chase that come into our county. We were able to mitigate that with the use of stop sticks. So that's an expense that we've got in all of our squad cars. Every deputy has the stop sticks, and so that we have a better chance of them being in place when needed. And it was a success there with Eau Claire County in that deal. In May last year, we had 2 incidences of ATV personal injury crashes. Both of those were on private property. In June, we had a missing person from the Ettrick area. I don't know if you guys remember. This was newsworthy. Was missing from Ettrick. His vehicle was located up in the city of Eau Claire. Ultimately, the person was found in a campground in Dane County. He was missing willingly, but he was found alive and well. In August, I just want to highlight this one to get the message out. So that was a preempt, or that's bringing me into this here. Now that was intentional. So no. Anyway, and we had a rural county road that somebody had blown grass clippings onto the road. It was a very small area. We know the intent was to clean it up, but it didn't happen within the second that they were blown out on the road. Somebody drove by and got very upset. It was a motorcyclist drove by, got very upset, and took upon himself to take care of justice there that day. So that case has been forwarded to the district attorney's office. I don't know if it's still pending or not, but it's the grass clippings on the road is very serious in this county, whether it's intentional or not, and that's just one of the things that resulted. So. The next couple cases, August and September, we had a hunter that was found deceased in the wood after being reported missing. Another one, a person was working on a vehicle, the vehicle fell off the jacks, or the jacks malfunctioned and fell onto that person. So we responded there, and that was ruled a death as well. In October, we had a construction accident we responded to in the village of Pigeon Falls. The Dollar General was being built, and the retaining wall on the backside was in place when construction persons were working around there. That wall gave way and caved in, and these were multiple layers of 2,000-pound cement blocks that had fallen and had fell on that construction worker. He survived. But it was an extrication effort that had to get him out from under those objects. So, And then, so those are the highlights of the big incidents from last year. There's a lot of them there for you to read. Most of them are crashes. We have an emergency response team that we're called out for some of the more dangerous situations where we have to enter a building for some reason. Our team was called out once last year. Civil process, that's a constitutional duty of a sheriff, is to serve papers, civil process for the courts. In 2022, we served we were given 270 to serve. We were successful in serving 227 of those. Some of those are revenue generators, others are not, so we do have some revenue generated from civil process. Pretty comparable. In 2021, there's 265, and in 2020, 253 that actually got served. So, sheriff sales, that's another duty of the sheriff. We had 16 scheduled in 2022 versus 10 in 2021 and 14 in 2020. Those we do right on the front door here. Whether we know anybody's going to be here to bid them or not, we have to be there to actually do a sheriff sale. Transports, there were 248 transports in 2022 that involved either my staff or contracted transport agencies such as the Marshal's Office or Talon or Ready Transport. 2021, there were 358 transports, so we were down pretty significant. Again, our jail numbers were down pretty significant in 2022, so that may be a result of that, and there's more and more video appearances as well that could result in fewer transports. Bookings, in 2022, we had 690 total bookings into our jail versus 760 the year before and 978 in 2019, so our bookings are dropping. Again, that's in proportion to the number of people we have in our jail too. That had been dropping, so we would expect that our bookings that were going to be dropping. In 2022, our average daily population was 20.3. Like I said before, today we have 46. You know, if that were to continue for a period of time, that would be our average daily population. So we're up there. Some dispatch statistics. 25,379 incidents were created in dispatch. That's city, village, county, all total for the year 2022. Down a little bit from 21. Drug arrests. There were in 2022 a total of 183 drug arrests. In 2021, 260. So we're down a little bit, but not as low as it was in 2020 when there was 154. Cases referred to the district attorney's office. Now, don't compare this to the numbers that John presented as far as criminal complaints issued. These numbers are cases that we refer to the district attorney's office and for consideration of charges. They decide what charges are going to be filed and what are going to be combined. So this really is not a reflection to be compared to his numbers. But in 2022, we referred 310 cases to the district attorney's office, and these are not traffic tickets or forfeiture citations. These are criminal matters that were referred to the district attorney's office. I think those are the highlights. Just want to mention a couple of grants that, just so you're all aware, we have an an emergency management position, and most of that person's salary is paid for by grants. And in 2022, we received it's two separate grants we normally get. One was $51,923, and the other was $10,943. So pretty significant grant funding towards that position. It doesn't fully pay for it, but it pays for a good share of it anyway. So those are the highlights. Again, take a look at that. You may have further questions. I'll gladly answer them. We'll probably put this on the Sheriff's Office webpage too, so that the public can take a look at what we do, I guess. So, any questions?
Any questions for the sheriff? Yeah, Heather.
I was just wondering, have you seen a trend in what you think is driving our jail population up right now? Like certain
Well,
types of offenses or?
The only thing I can say is I noticed that there's more and higher cash bonds. And there's about 10 or 12 right now, pretty high cash bonds, and that's where we're at. We're about 10 or 12 higher than we were this time last month. So we had some pretty significant cases come in the last few weeks, and maybe even in the last 6 weeks. So I think that's a big part of it right there. Maybe not the whole thing, but it's going to be a big part of it.
Okay.
Any other questions? I
Thank
don't
you.
see any. Thank you. We'll go on to resolutions. I don't see Brian around anywhere,
Not yet.
so I'm not sure if he's coming or not.
They might have got more snow up their way. St. Paul.
The agenda on the website doesn't have them listed.
Better, it's this one right here.
This is off the website.
Financing borrowing, right there.
That's off the website.
So, emailed you. He wasn't gonna make it in person, so emailed him back and sent the link.
Oh, okay.
What do you call it?
Anyway, we'll go to
Okay.
item 6A,
Rick says that this isn't on the.
request
agenda,
for
but they
state
put it on the
revised
web.
and current real estate transfer fee revenue sharing formula.
Whereas the collection of real estate transfer fee by counties was mandated by state of Wisconsin in 1969 and included a requirement that counties remit 50% of all transfer fees collected to the state. And whereas in 1981, the state changed the transfer fee formula to require counties to remit 80% of all transfer fees collected to the state. And whereas the county, through the Register of Deeds office, assumes the annual operating costs of recording all real estate transfers occurring in each county, including the collection of real estate transfer fees. And whereas Trempealeau County real estate transfer fee collections over the past 6 years totaled $2,316,946.12, of which the county retained $347,169.76 and $1,388,679.06 was remitted to the state. And whereas using the 50-50 split, the county's share of fees collected in local real estate transfers during the same 6-year period would have provided an additional $520,754.65 in support of local government. And whereas in 2022, the state of Wisconsin has built up a budget surplus over $7 billion, while many Wisconsin counties continue to struggle financially due to the ever-increasing costs of providing county government services in an inflationary economy and providing services for increasing unfunded state-mandated programs, along with the financial restrictions imposed by state-imposed levy limits. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors that in an effort to assist all Wisconsin counties, the state of Wisconsin revised the real estate transfer fee share formula to again allow Wisconsin counties to retain 50% of all real estate transfer fees collected, with 50% be remitted to the state. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to Governor Tony Evers, all members of the state legislature representing Trempealeau County, the Wisconsin Counties Association, and all other Wisconsin counties. Introduced by Executive Finance Committee, David Larson, John Austin, Richard Seisha, David Orsh, Bridget Turner.
Move to approve.
Motion by Ms. Nutter, seconded by, I heard it down there, by Mr. Orsh. Discussion. Anyway, Mr. Miller.
Maybe I'm not very sharp tonight here, but those dollar figures don't add up.
I didn't add them myself. Did you?
It says the total is 2.3 million collected. The 347 makes sense, but then it says
Well, the numbers
1.388.
They don't look like they match, do they?
They don't match, no.
And Rose said she wasn't coming to the meeting tonight.
So before we send it out, they should match. That's all I'm trying to say.
Thank you, thank you. I will bring that up to her right here.
Other than the fact that the numbers are wrong, you're okay with it? Okay.
Therefore, in
Yeah,
the
the state needs
further,
to step up.
Any other questions or discussion?
Are there other counties that are also involved in this through the Counties Association?
Oh, yes.
I think
yes.
so, yeah.
Yes.
Many counties. We've gotten a lot of them
Did you?
that
work on
passed the
writing this up?
resolution and then sent them to us, showing that they also did it, yeah.
I think probably every county will be on board.
Okay.
Probably what happened, she took some numbers from, that she
I'll-
was copying
I'll,
from another county or something.
I'll corner her. Maybe she's even watching tonight, too.
Anyway, we'll get that straightened out tomorrow.
Yes.
Get the numbers right. So hearing no more discussion, you want to call the roll for the vote?
It's just a yes or no.
You don't need a voice vote?
Just-
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, on the real estate, revised current real estate transfer fee revenue, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, anybody? Hearing none, it's carried.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Riley's on Zoom there.
Oh,
We could jump back to him if you wanted to.
yeah, we can go back to 5A, financing options. You have a copy of the,
It was on your desk,
should be
yes.
on your desk. Good evening, Brian, you're available?
Just looked at what she sent.
I am. Good evening.
I don't know where you got.
This one was delivered to my office. And then-
Okay. This is for the 4,265,000 general obligation promissory notes.
But I mean, he said it was delivered to us.
You want to explain it?
We don't give you one.
Yes, sir. Happy to. I apologize. I had intended to be there in person, but had some personal things going on today that required me to be at home and on duty. Happy to answer questions. Maybe at the end would be best since I'm by video. But last we spoke, it was indicated to do a bit of diligence, which we had done kind of gotten a start on to a large degree with respect to looking forward in time at potential capital projects and any related financing that may be contemplated over the next few years. I think Paul was kind enough to go and solicit thoughts from various department heads and other members across the county to identify any major capital projects that may be presenting themselves in the immediate future, say 3 to 5 years. We really got nominal numbers out of that request, none that would materially impact the county's overall financing, what the levy for debt service would be over time. And so what we did then was take what I'll call a stab at mapping out various dollar amounts primarily associated with roads and bridges, which had been to some degree the prior plan. And we took different dollar amounts, say 3 to 5 million, and then a year with repayment schedules that assumed level annual payments. And then we kind of built the amortizations out to 5, 7, and 10 years. And we discussed that at the committee level at the last exec finance meeting, and really looked at what the impacts would be if we just step back in time. One thing we were looking at initially was borrowing capacity. You have a lot available and it will continue to be that way. So that's not really a constraint. What is a constraint is what is the acceptable amount of debt service that you're willing to levy for. And I think it became clear that if we use the larger dollar amounts and the shorter amortizations across the board over a roughly 3 to 5 year period, we're really stacking on top of existing debt service. And the levy specifically for debt service would comprise a greater proportion each year of your total levy amount. And I think that was viewed as likely unsustainable. You have the authority and the ability to levy an unlimited amount for debt service, but that doesn't necessarily match up with what your goals and objectives might be from a total budget perspective. So after some, what I guess I'll say is important dialogue on the ability to use various funding, what some different strategies might look like to achieve what I guess I would call the stated objectives associated with the highway department. It became relatively clear that obviously we're going to proceed with the current financing, and the goal was to identify what is an amortization in maximum years that would be acceptable, but would also allow you some ability to look at future capital projects and the related financing. And so we identified 5 years for this particular issue. And then there would be further discussion throughout the course of this year regarding what the trajectory of road and bridge projects would look over the near term. And by that, I mean the next year through about 3 years. And so I would applaud an ongoing conversation in that regard amongst a number of different parties, probably at the committee level for planning purposes. I certainly indicated that we can map out a lot of different scenarios. We tried to keep it fairly rudimentary for the review that was conducted, understanding that there's a lot of variables at play, and the more you introduce, the more difficult it becomes to make decisions. If you remember as well, I believe it was December, perhaps November, where we adopted the authorizing or initial resolution under statute. And if you remember, that's really the first step in the process. It doesn't obligate the county to do anything. It puts you in a position for up to 5 years from the date of the resolution to borrow and finance the projects that are enumerated in that initial resolution. And so that was passed and does set the stage to proceed forward. This pre-sale report, to a large degree, memorializes what was discussed and comes out of exec finance as a recommendation. The size of it incorporates $4,140,000 in project expenses between roads and bridges, and also equipment for the sheriff's department. It's grossed up for anticipated costs and expenses. Much of that is I'll call budget. And as we get to when the bonds actually price, we resize in relationship to what the actual costs are and what the pricing is on the day of sale. So this is not final, it is preliminary. So, and we are kind of trying to aim on the high side to make sure that we are below that and don't come back with a higher number. The rates that we have in there are estimated as well. They're a bit over the current market where things are pricing right now. As you're looking towards the back after the text, we have a estimated or preliminary debt service schedule that has both the capitalization, the sources and uses of funds, as well as the estimated repayment on both principal amortization and the total principal and interest. Interest rates through about 5 years are actually very flat right now. They're very close to each other from year over year. So again, we're trying to be conservative with our estimate of interest rates. The calendar would envision coming to the April meeting with a resolution that would be binding, in that it would establish the terms and conditions for the issue, and then we would close a few weeks later. So this is, again, informational from the standpoint of, I think we went back and did what was asked by the board. I had that discussion in exec finance. Out of that is coming a recommendation for this size and structure. And then once we walk away from this, the intention would be to proceed with everything that needs to happen between now and the day of your April meeting, where the pricing would come in on a bid basis, and the winning bid would be awarded to the lowest total interest cost. Throughout that day, final documents are prepared, and the resolution then comes before the board on that day. Perhaps I'll just pause there and see if I can field any questions, or perhaps there are other comments.
Any questions for Brian?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Bridget.
Just to clarify, Brian, on the right-hand side of the graphics document that you have, is the levy in dollars per thousand of
Yes.
value, correct?
It is
Okay.
it is in dollars per thousand of value. So out of your total millage, right, your total tax rate, this portion is what is attributable to debt service only. So if you were at, say, 5 mils, as of right now, you're at about 1.25, I think it's actually more like 1.3, so $1.30 per thousand. This would envision that going up to something close to $1.60 per thousand. And thank you for that question. It's not entirely indicative on that scale, but yes, it is dollars per thousand.
Any other questions? Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chair, what is the procedure that is going to be taken in terms of decision-making regarding this issue? Because this is the money we're talking about spending this year, I assume, or is spent, or it will be spent. What is the procedure? Because we still have to approve it as a board.
You were just talking about the April meeting. April meeting.
Okay.
Do you want to answer that question, Brian?
Sure. The first step procedurally is the adoption of the initial resolution.
And that was in
done,
December.
Yep, and
December.
that was done as a general obligation bond issue, which preserved your right to have debt that was up to 20 years in full term, understanding that we were going to have a broader discussion about what the issue would actually look like. That invoked a 30-day petition period. The county was required to publish its intent to issue the debt, and the 30-day petition period has expired, so we're outside of that. We can proceed accordingly. There will be a final step in the process as far as the board is concerned, and that is a resolution would come before the board that I will call an award resolution. It will have all of the final numbers in it. It will also have a levy schedule, and the board would adopt that resolution potentially, and that can be I believe a simple majority vote, whereas the initial resolution requires the 3/4 vote of the board to proceed.
Okay.
It's a follow-up question, and maybe I'm
go
missing
ahead.
something here. How much are we locked in terms of the amount of money to be spent by the highway department? Are we locked into a given dollar amount?
If you look at the next to the last page, on that, down at the bottom, the deposit to construction fund, that 4 million is the highway and the 140,000 is the sheriff's department vehicle. So it's 4 million for the highway department.
Are we locked into that, is my question.
That's
At
the way
this
you
point-
adopted the budget in November, yes. You adopted the budget in November with that figure. It was Brian, 3.2 million for roads and 800,000 for bridges. Yep.
If we should-
You sent me that.
I think that's, I didn't bring that with me, but I think it's 3.2 and 800,000, yep. And then 140,000 for the sheriff's vehicles.
My question still is, are we locked in?
You
Well-
adopted the budget in November with those figures.
Right, but any other resolution, we can come back and revisit. And we can't come back and revisit a budget item. The money hasn't been spent.
And the highway maybe has.
They spent a good share of it because they got a contract to rock and all that stuff ahead of time, engineering, all that stuff's got to happen ahead.
I realize that. I guess if Corp Counsel would happen to have any advice you can give to the board next month on this, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Well, I can give a little bit of input. I think right now, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, the board could choose to do a lesser amount for the borrowing on the resolution in April. Is that correct?
So when we come to the table in April, we're effectively done. So it would be highly unlikely. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, and again, I'm not an attorney, but typically the resolution is crafted in a fashion that is indicative of the transaction on that day, and all the numbers will be as they are. And so you either adopt it or you do not. I mean, you accept it or you don't. I don't think we would change the numbers that drastically to reduce the issue size on the day of sale. We could go back after that. If we rejected, there is the opportunity to come back to the table at some point. There's some complications around that, but you really want to act on what's set out in front of you and act on that. What I mean by that is to either approve it or reject it, one or the other.
And the reason I asked that question is because if you did reject it for any reason, you've already approved a budget for that dollar amount, so then you have to find another way to fund that budget that you've already approved.
We
So that's
could
where I
adjust
was
the
going with
size.
that.
We could reduce the size leading up to the sale. So we could. So when you issue securities like this, you put out an offering document to the marketplace, and so they use that to understand all the facts and circumstances and any other material disclosures, as well as the numbers, obviously. And so the bond dealers, the parties that are buying this, are marketing the transaction to their investor customers. And so they've largely set expectations, and they're going to price the bonds in relation to the demand for them, as well as the size of the issue, which includes part of their own compensation. So, ultimately, you're pretty well baked on the day of sale. And it would be very difficult to say, just go amend the resolution to capture different dollar amounts, because all of the other numbers change as a result of the size and structure of the issue. And so you're really in a better position to just accept or reject. But when the securities offering document is published, you can amend it to make changes, but you're not going to meet between, say, March and April to make those sorts of decisions. But practically speaking, that would be very difficult.
Does that answer your question? Probably not really.
Well, you've got two different issues, right? There's the borrowing and the projects. In between now and then, you obviously can have your conversation about the actual projects. You're not locked into anything walking away from this conversation. If there are going to be changes, we'd certainly want to make sure they are incorporated into the transactional documents leading up to the sale.
I do have one follow-up question.
Go ahead.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that it is possible to borrow that amount, carry some of it over to the next building season, construction season, and utilize it there.
That is accurate.
Okay,
so
thank you.
How much use? So when we authorize the debt, to a large degree, you do it by purpose, and so notes are a little more flexible tool than bonds. I don't want to just make a blanket statement to say the money is totally fungible. But yes, if you wanted to spread, just because you borrow for it cannot dictate really how quickly you spend it. There are rules you need to abide by, but we could walk you through all of that. So yes, you could spend it over multiple fiscal periods.
Okay, any other questions? This is basically for information only, so thank you, Brian.
Thank you all, and I'm glad I was able to plug in here tonight, so appreciate that.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Very good.
Okay, where were we? Resolution 2?
Yes.
Resolution 2, financial assistance for Trempealeau County Food Pantry.
Whereas the Trempealeau County Food Pantry is an organization that operates out of the old Trempealeau County Healthcare Center facility. And whereas since arriving at its current location, the pantry has assisted families with emergency food needs. And whereas the pantry is operated by numerous volunteers who have donated hours of volunteer time in the past, and whereas the need for the pantry's services has increased significantly over the past years, and as a result, the pantry has added additional freezers to store more food for distribution. And whereas, due to the added freezers, the cost to operate the pantry have increased, in particular, the electrical used to operate the additional freezers. And whereas the Trempealeau County Healthcare Center has been covering the electricity cost on behalf of the pantry, but is unable to continue covering this expense. And whereas the pantry provides a valuable service in Trempealeau County, and taking on the electricity expense would be a significant burden and adversely impact the services that it provides. And whereas the pantry estimates that its monthly electric bill is approximately $600 per month and is requesting that Trumpealeau County cover the electrical expense in order for the pantry to maintain its current level of services. Now be it resolved that the Trumpealeau County Board of Supervisors hereby appropriates $7,200 from the general fund to cover the electricity expenses of the pantry for 2023. Introduced by Executive Finance Committee, David Larson, Richard Seisha, Bridget Turner, John Austin, David Orsh.
Move to approve.
Motion by Ms. Nutter,
I'll second.
seconded by Ms. Turner. Go ahead.
One of the whereases says the healthcare center can no longer pay for this. It sounds to me like they no longer want to pay for it. I guess some clarification, if it's available. I'm not totally familiar with the healthcare center's budget, but it would seem to me that $600 a month would be available there if they wanted to pay it.
And they
I might
are
be able to
paying.
answer a little bit.
And they do, and they did pay 2022, and that originally was in this resolution also. We made the, I'm gonna call it donation back in 2021 to cover 5,000 of that expense out of the general fund, which that did happen. Now, this resolution is just worded for 2023.
Originally, it had 2022 in it too, so we took 2022 out.
And it also had in it that they would come back every year and ask for money in the budget.
I have Ms. Waldera first.
That's fine.
I understand that the pantry is run out of the old building at the Trempealeau County Healthcare Center. But I also understand that that building is utilized for a multitude of other things. Help me understand how we came to this dollar amount being attributed to the food pantry, and is that separated out from the total electrical expense of that building, and how?
The healthcare center, I think the way they've got it figured, because there are other things, it's all on one meter, but it is prorated out between the different programs that are going on there.
And can you describe what that prorating looks like?
I don't.
They were not able to do that for us. I have concerns about it, which is why their original request was for this to be an ongoing thing, and that's why we've said we'll do it for this year, but more research has to be done into this.
So they understand the expectation that they need to formulate some sort of a proration that makes sense.
It's also, it is run by a 501c3 that operates, as I understand it, through the Legion. The
American
answers we
Legion.
got
American
did
Legion.
not totally satisfy me. That's why we said, okay, you need money now, we'll help you now. But we have to have more information and a lot of other things before we do it again.
Thank you.
Ms. Fritz.
I really feel like this should have been brought up at budget time. If they knew last year that they would, in their words, no longer to be able to pay for it this next year, they should have brought it up at budget time. I think it's a really bad time of year to be just bringing this up.
If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I have been wrong in the past. They also, the frozen meals for our nutrition program is also housed there, correct? In those freezers? Because at one point, those freezers died a few years ago and had to be replaced.
Yeah, they bought a new big block.
Yes. And so some of this, I believe some of this food is part, I mean, to be arguing about whether or not we're going to feed people is beyond my comprehension. But I believe some of the food is for the nutrition program, the frozen meals.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
don't-
I'm not.
I don't think
I
so.
would need, if Deb Sukla is watching, she
I-
could call, or the ADRC, but
We
it
can-
was my
We
thought.
can find that out.
Right.
Is there any other question? Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
so
Pat.
just calculate, right, $300 a month for
Six-
extra, like,
600.
well, you want 7,200.
That's for the whole
Divided
year.
by
12.
12 is 600. Yep. 600 a month.
For electrical.
Yeah.
I own a big gas station. My freezers don't take
There's a lot
that.
of freezers.
I got a lot of
That's
freezers.
why I think some of the food
Lot of
is from
fridges.
that, is from the nutrition
I
program.
think they have like 13 freezers.
I think it was more
Must have
than
used it in the
that.
building.
It's
They
more
got
than
a-
that.
Excuse me, John, it's 18, I believe they were.
18 freezers.
13 came up from another research project of mine.
Yeah.
13 in another food pantry in another county, and their bill runs about $200 a month. So it didn't
I think
quite-
it should have been reworded and said it
Yes.
includes some space rent or something, I don't know.
Yes.
Because, you know, they do have a loading dock, which really makes it handy. They can come in with some ways and go directly off. And it's a handy food pantry, that's for sure.
Chair?
Go ahead, Mr.
Just a comment. You know, this was debated really hard at the Exec Finance Committee, and nobody doesn't want to feed anybody. That certainly isn't the case. I just want to make a comment that I believe the way it's set up with the 501c3 is that the American Legion supports them. They don't run it. It's a separate, completely separate thing, but the Legion donates to it. One of the questions asked of the chair of the 501c3 was, are there any programs ongoing every year to solicit donations for the support of electricity and infrastructure for the organization? And there's not. So one of the suggestions was, we'd love to see that kind of thing going on. If you're going to have a 501c3, you have to have a way of supporting yourself. Would love to see the county constituents, our constituents, help support that organization. It's a great thing. That's all I want to say.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Miller?
I'm involved in the food pantry in Blair. I shouldn't say every, many of the communities in the county have food pantries, and we are supported by donations. Now, we in Blair probably serve 20 to 40 families a month. This food pantry here in Whitehall serves everybody in the county. We just serve people primarily in the Blair-Taylor school system, and you'll find that that's the case with all the other local food pantries. They serve a given area. The food pantry here serves anybody who has residence in the county. I wish I could guess what their food bill is a month, and if they're getting donations to cover it, it has to be a substantial amount of donations, because I would imagine if they're going to be feeding 100 to 150 families, I can't even guess how much they spend a month. It has to be quite a large amount of money. I think David, and I want to say Supervisor David.
Larson is his last name.
It was like we got two Davids.
But and maybe both Davids would agree with me that maybe there needs to be a separate meter, some way of determining the actual costs. That would help them to know what's going on, as well as the center.
That was a question I had. I have not had time to request, I visit out there to
Yeah.
look at it before I would. Sometimes the cost of a meter in a commercial building and redoing it ends up costing more than you would in a lifetime paying the bill.
Yeah, but somehow there needs to be a way of getting a separation there, probably.
That's what I'm looking towards.
But what happens, for those of you who may not know, Feed My People is the primary supplier, plus they do get some commodities from the U.S. government. And the commodities, to my understanding, are delivered monthly, and the Feed My People will make 2 stops a month. They do need refrigeration space because they do get frozen products, and they have to have a way to store those. So they really probably have no choice. I know in our little food pantry, we're open twice a month, and we have a possibility of purchasing food from Feed My People at a substantial discount. They can stop twice a month, and we can kind of bring our food supply up twice a month to meet the needs that we have. But we don't have to maintain as much space as they do, because they only meet monthly. So anyway, I guess I just wanted to give you that information, but it would be nice to know how they determined the amount.
You do?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Schreiner.
in my opinion, the value of the program and the food bank is not the issue. In my opinion, the issue is the veracity of the claim that the healthcare center can't pay the bill. And I have not heard anything tonight that would support that claim.
Mr. Orsh.
There was a statement by the health department individual here that stated that if we couldn't do it, they would figure it out. Healthcare center.
I agree with Supervisor Orsh. She did say they'd figure it out. Of course, she kind of gave attitude that's here or there, but she reluctantly would say figure it out.
Yeah, Ms. Waldera?
I feel bad that I don't know this, but I don't. I think what I'm hearing is that there are a multitude of food pantries in each township that serves a smaller population, but the one here at the healthcare center, who's overseeing that over the big program? Where does that run out of?
I think the Legion actually.
The American Legion is what we were told.
Okay, and that's where they're coming in with this 501c. Okay.
And this was the one that used to be housed in Whitehall. So Whitehall doesn't have a food pantry, right?
No, Whitehall does have one.
Oh, they have one.
It had been originally in Arcadia. They lost their spot. Ashley Furniture took over the old hospital, if you remember, a while back. And then it was moved up in the northern part of the county, and they couldn't sustain it. So it did. This is why I think the Legion picked up the sponsorship.
Go ahead, Ms. Snyder.
So the healthcare center is not responsible for the food pantry. They're just paying the electric bill because the freezers are there. The American Legion is responsible for it. So the healthcare center has been paying the bill for the Legion for however long they've been there. But I also think, in my brain, and you're on Human Services, Deb talked about this at our last meeting, that I believe some of our, but I could be wrong, but I think some of our frozen meals for nutrition program are there. But I could be wrong.
You had the numbers for January, you said.
But
Right, at the Exec Finance Committee meeting, when they presented, they said that for January 2023, 801 people were served. For 1
Yes,
month,
just
800.
January.
That would be the families, whatever the number of people in those
In
families.
the household.
Yeah, well, that would be maybe fewer households, I would guess, but these are the number of people that were served within those households.
Go ahead, explain.
So prior to it being located at the healthcare center, do we know how that was funded?
In terms of the utilization of the space,
Yeah, like you had mentioned, it was in Arcadia and then a northern part of the county, but
Who ran it?
yeah,
Who funded it?
yeah, who was funding it at that point?
I'm not sure
The
I'm
Legion
not
has
sure I
always been
can.
funding it, right?
Has it? Yeah.
Pardon?
The Legion has always been.
No,
I
no,
don't think
originally
they
it was
just
in
funded
our-
since-
anything.
Okay.
The Legion.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Since it's been here, the Legion has been the
I think the
sponsor.
Legion just
Forward.
basically furnishes the labor.
Okay.
And I think
And
there's
the
some other
healthcare center
non-Legion members
furnishes
that
the
help.
freezers.
Volunteers.
It's all
And it's
volunteer
all
help.
volunteers.
Yes.
And you'll find that if you go out there on the Saturday, they have the distribution. I would guess there's probably a dozen and a half people working, volunteers, and they are open from some ungodly hour, like 7 o'clock in the morning until about 6 at night that day.
7
And,
to 5, yep.
Pardon?
7 to 5.
Yeah, yeah.
Was it third?
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm thankful for the dedicated volunteers.
I think what I'm understanding everyone's saying here is that when this initially came to the Executive Finance Committee, there were questions asked and there were requests made of the healthcare center to further define for our reference for future requests to cover this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
If you look at the bottom of the thing, you'll see it didn't pass unanimously. It was a 3-2 vote, just barely passed.
So right now, we're being asked to cover 2023, and then they are going to work to clarify some of those things that we had requested. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
I don't think they've agreed to clarify.
I'm
I think it was-
uncomfortable
I think
with
it
the
was-
fact that that's not in the resolution.
I think it was more my saying I wanted to do more research before next year to do this. Before we did this again, I wanted a lot more information, and I don't know that I got a response.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So, I don't think there's anyone in the room that has serious issue with funding this program. I think there's more tension in, with regard to what pocket it comes out of, as far, really, when you boil it all down. It all comes out of the same pocket. They can afford to pay it. There's no doubt that's true. I think there's tension that between the two facilities, the county and the healthcare center, that needs to be examined. That's, you boil it all down, that's where it comes from.
Okay.
And it needs a deeper dive.
Ms. Fritz, you had your hand up, did you?
I guess I was just wondering how they came about it at this time, because they've been working with, they know the budget process and the seasons and all that. Like, how did it come about?
I think their problem was they thought that, or the resolution that we passed 2 years ago, they thought was just an ongoing resolution, so it didn't even occur to them.
That's how it came up, because we went back and pulled out the resolution that said it was only to pay for 2021. They thought they would be in the budget for 22, 23, and ongoing. I told them that's not the way the resolution was, so that's why they came back, and because they actually called me towards the end of last year and wanted to know when they were going to get their money for the electricity for 2022, and I said there isn't any, because the resolution
So
said
they
1
went
year.
the whole year of 2022 thinking we were going to pay it? Oh,
Right.
okay. I was wondering what happened to those monthly bills.
There you go.
Like I'm saying, I think some of why they're coming back to us, I think a lot of it is because there's been some tension between the healthcare center and the county/DHS. And for some, I don't know the details, but I just hate to see the tensions between two agencies that are supposed to be working together is part of the reason why it's causing this, whatever, that's going on here financially. This is, like it's been brought up by some people, this needs to be looked into more. This is a sad state of affairs, that two county agencies can't get along. We're supposed to be adults.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Where was that one coming from? Oh, Bridget.
Here.
Go ahead.
So, sitting on the healthcare center board, amongst some other people, I don't believe that there's any rift between the healthcare center and the county as far as their electric bill. They just have submitted it in the past that way, so they thought they could do it again. They did say they were willing to figure it out, but since then, I think they're aware that they need to have a discussion with the Legion, see where the problem is, and then move forward from there. That's it.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution as it is presented. I'd suggest that we approve it, but require that there be an actual formulation for allocation of that electric bill for ongoing or for future requests. And/or investigation into other funding sources.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Put that amendment in. Can you reread it?
Not yet. We want to say it one more time because you kind of added it. No, you can't.
Well, that's something else.
Annual request?
You're asking them.
And see, that part was in the original resolution that I brought to exec finance. Had that in for every year they'd have to come to budget and ask for that money. But that got taken out.
I am not asking for them to come and ask for money every year. What the amendment I'm asking for is for them to formulate a way to allocate their electrical fund appropriately to the food pantry.
As a line item budget in
Now
the
you're
budget
talk-
process.
That's the healthcare center part.
Yeah.
That building
Oh.
is used for more than one thing.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And/or investigate other ways to fund it, and then next year come with a resolution that would potentially explain that better.
It is a nice facility for us, and we do take
Yes.
quite a bit of space. I don't know, the space has got to be worth something.
Sure.
The healthcare center does not currently charge for the space, the fact that there's a loading dock there for everything else. They also don't charge for the heating of the building through the winter. So economically, it's
Or
a
air
nice
conditioning, for that
place
matter.
for them to be.
Heat or air, either one.
Heat or air conditioning.
Yes, it's not.
And just to be clear, the healthcare center is not really obligated. I mean, they have been doing
Correct.
this.
That
It's
this
not
has
like-
been a
Yes, this has been something they.
gift from them.
A gift from them
temporarily.
to the food pantry. So I don't know why we're so
Yes.
mad about this.
Yeah,
I don't
and
understand
it's a good point, and I just want to elaborate. What was brought up to the Exec Finance Committee was, they have been doing that. They have expanded their freezers from like 3 or 4 now to 14. And so they're like, this is way beyond.
Did you
the s-
say 18?
18, okay, way beyond the scope of what they originally, I'm sure, thought they signed up for. So they're asking this budget that we control for some help. I think we made it clear to the Legion that we need them to, get their support going, and so that wouldn't have to be, a public donation from the county. Like other 501c3s, most of them have their monies that come from private donations. Not to say that we can't, because we could. We absolutely can. But that's the direction I thought the committee was laying out, that we would like for them to do that. That's why the motion was taken out to be an in perpetuity thing, because we want the public to support it by their own, free will, not something that the county itself does. So.
Heather, go ahead.
I just
was.
want to clarify too, I think a lot of us aren't against the food pantry. I grew up going to the food pantry in Arcadia. That's the situation that we were in. But just knowing that that building is used for more than just the food pantry, I think we just want to see the differentiation, because the other part of their building can be used for revenue for whoever they're housing, or services, day services, whatever they're doing in the rest of the building. I think we just want to see that differentiation, so we know this amount of the electric bill is being paid by our revenue from the building for whoever's staying here or utilizing the building besides the food pantry.
Go ahead,
So-
Mr. Nutter.
So
Yes.
do you want them to also say how much we pay for heat, how much we pay for electricity, how much it costs to have a loading dock there? I mean, do you want to break it all out like that? Or couldn't we just say, we'll split the cost of the electricity between, it's all coming from the same place?
So that was your third.
Okay.
You had a point of order?
I thought there was a second, but Stacy,
Yes.
Stacy seconded that.
Yeah.
No,
Bridget did.
did.
I'm sorry. But I think we're jumping around.
Yeah.
I think the discussion needs to be on the.
We're on the amendment. Can you read it back now?
And I want Dawn to help me with this, if I've got enough, or you tell me what I gotta add. It's be it further resolved that the healthcare center formulate the allocation of electricity for the food pantry separately. I was gonna put that in separately, but we don't have to, because you want the healthcare center to formulate what the actual allocation for electricity for the food pantry is.
Correct, and investigate other financial opportunities for funding.
But you're telling the
Future.
healthcare center that part? The healthcare center, or that's the food pantry part? Wouldn't it?
Heat, air conditioning, electricity?
I'm happy with the allocation. That's fine.
But then investigate alternate financing sources or something like that. Okay.
Financial sources, I think is a better word than financing.
You think so, financing?
Financial.
Funding, I like funding better.
Or funding sources.
Sources.
There you go, better yet.
I remember that, sources.
Now,
Okay.
before we vote on it, read it back one more time.
Be it further resolved that the healthcare center formulate the allocation of electricity for the food pantry and investigate alternate funding sources. Close enough?
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to everybody else. Okay, this
You're just on the amendment.
still needs to be a roll call vote?
No, not on that.
No, okay. A voice vote on the roll call vote. I mean, on the amendment. Voice vote on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it passed.
I didn't hear a lot of ayes, though. I heard a
Huh?
lot of silence.
I didn't hear nays either, but they did
Okay.
say aye.
Yeah, they both said aye up there.
Yeah.
I heard that.
Okay,
Okay.
so now that amendment's in
as
here,
amended.
so now the resolution is still basically the same for 2023 to donate the 7,200
With the amendment.
with the amendment.
Okay.
That requires some funding, so that requires a roll call vote.
Yes.
Is there any more discussion on the
Original resolution as amended.
original resolution as amended? Mr. Orsh?
Yeah, Chair, I've got one other question.
This is your
So
third.
really, if the county does want to support this moving forward, there needs to be a budget. It needs to be in the budget. I don't think any of us want to see another resolution coming every year. It needs to be part of the budgeting process. I
Yeah.
want to say that's what the healthcare center was proposing that they do.
Yeah.
But it needs to be in their budget as well. And so I just want to make sure that we have it straight that way, and it's not something that we have to debate over every year, you know? So.
We do have members of that board that can make sure that they hear this proposal. So, if there's no questions, we'll call the roll.
Dan Schreiner. Put him on the
Sure.
spot. What?
No.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seixas.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
No.
Heather Fritsch.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you said yes?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
David Orsh.
No.
John Austin.
Yes.
Don Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
14-3.
It passes. Okay, where are we at now?
The next resolution, I hope.
Oh.
This is where,
Resolution.
who wants to make the announcement of this?
This one was supposed to go to exec finance and got in too late, so we just made it a chair. It's basically accepting money, so it doesn't require.
a little louder?
Oh.
There's so many conversations I can't hear.
Anyway, you can read the resolution.
It's a new
grant.
one on your desk.
It's a BEAD grant. It's, originally was supposed to go to exec finance, but it got in too late, so it didn't, so we just made it a board chair, what do you call it, a resolution from the chair that has to be approved by the whole board. And it's accepting money, not handing it out, so,
Well, it's not accepting, it's just
well,
participating in a
participating in a
program.
grant program.
Who will give us money?
Yeah, potential grant money coming in.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Whereas the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, PSC, is committed to making high-speed internet accessible and affordable for all Wisconsinites. And whereas PSC is implementing the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act's Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Local Planning Grant Program, BEAD program. Whereas the BEAD program will provide grants to local municipalities to assist the PSC in the planning and development for high-speed internet access across the state of Wisconsin. And whereas Trumbull County has the opportunity to opt into the BEAD local planning grant program by submitting a letter of intent by March 7th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. It's an interesting time. And whereas participation in this program will give Trempealeau County a voice in the planning and development of high-speed internet access across the state of Wisconsin, and specifically in Trempealeau County. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Trumpealeau County Board of Supervisors elects to participate in the BEAD program and directs the County Board Chair to sign the necessary opt-in documents for such participation. And be it further resolved that Dave Carlson, Trempealeau County Economic Development and Tourism Manager, will be the lead on the implementation of this program and report to the County Board periodically on its progress. Introduced by County Board Chair John Austin.
Motion by Ms. Nutter, second by Mr. Schreiner, I think. Okay. Discussion at all? Yeah, Dave is here, and he's actually put in charge of this program when it comes, so he can kind of fill you in on it.
If it passes.
If it passes, yeah. Dave, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, really, this, just so it's clarified, this is just a resolution to opt in, to send to the PSC a notice that Trempealeau County would like to participate and receive grant money. The PSC will be allocating a formula-based share of the money that they have available to each county and tribal entity that opts in. The exact amount will be determined by, how many entities opt in. But the minimum that we're expecting that we would receive from this is $18,000. And the money is really intended to go towards planning and outreach in terms of documenting areas where there is and is not broadband internet access in the county. So, how exactly we'd spend the money remains to be seen. Public Service Commission, in all candidness, is sort of making the rules up to this as they go along, and they've admitted that, but it's because of funding becoming available and having to meet certain deadlines to get this money out and to get planning going. So they're trying to really present a path for opting into the program. Once we got a grant offer or an award from PSC, then my understanding of the way the rules work for the board is that we'd have to bring that back to accept the grant funding. But I really think, this fits well into our economic development goals, because certainly internet is really important for any size of business, from the Ashley Furnitures on down to a mom and pop shop to somebody who's just starting an entrepreneurial business, at their home. And we have some of those people right on the board who are small business people, and they can tell you how important internet access is. So at this point, I would just encourage a yes vote on it to opt in, and then we'll come back after we find out how much money we're getting and who we might want to work with on this as well.
I just have a quick question, Dave. Do you know if they're going to be looking at, like out where I live is just the only access is satellite internet, which is quite expensive compared to other types of internet? Well, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a pretty good idea of where we've got, the high speed internet access right now. The TCC or, that kind of thing. And what I really would want to commit to is have a study process here, or that really looks at where we don't have internet access, and maybe some kind of even a county survey of property owners, especially where we know that there's not access, and are you interested in getting access, and what kind of access would you like to see? What all this is really meant to inform is down the road in a couple of years, there's going to be additional money for build outs of internet to service places that don't have a minimum standard of service yet. And then, we'll have some data and some planning, some documentation to fall back on that townships or city governments or village boards could look at when deciding, how they might participate or not in funding a project. Or, it might be helpful information to TCC or some other internet service provider.
Any other questions?
Do you know if that would be like some kind of a mailer out to county residents, or really no idea of how that survey will be done right now?
I would think it would be something like that. Yeah, it would be kind of ironic, right, to ask people to do an internet-based survey on internet connectivity that they don't have. So I didn't mean to be funny, but I couldn't pass that one up. No, we probably would use some kind of a snail mail paper survey that people could return, because I think that's really going to be important, especially in those rural areas that you mentioned.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just too, so you know that, Heather, that BEAT program also has, it goes by the speeds, not just who doesn't have it. I think the speeds are like 100 up and 20 down. I don't know that for sure. It's close to that. But it's not only just for people who don't have internet, but it's also for people who have internet, but they don't have the speeds that the government wants you to have.
Yeah, they were operating initially off of a standard of 25 megabit download and 5 megabit upload. And there's really talk that, the minimum standard needs to be, higher than that. And so we'll see when the rules come out and stuff like that, what they're talking about. But yeah, 25.5 doesn't get you a lot, but it's better than what my wife and I had as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, which was like 2.5 download and like barely a pulse upload.
That sounds like mine. It comes through a barbed wire fence.
Not much above a telegraph.
Get rid of it. So anyway, just
a voice vote. Yep.
A voice vote will work for this. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
I didn't catch Lori, but maybe she was there.
Lori?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay. Law Enforcement Emergency Management Committee. Carryover funds for Child Support Agency from 2022 budget to 2023 budget for completion of the Laserfish project.
Whereas the 2022 Child Support Agency budget included funding for a project to convert the agency's physical files to electronic files. And whereas the 2022 budget also allowed for expenditures to sort and shred old physical files in compliance with state and federal regulations and to reduce the need for physical space to store the files. Whereas work associated with both projects was not completed in 2022 due to staffing shortages, and whereas the funds remaining in the 22 budget for the file conversion and shredding project will be needed in 2023 to complete these projects, and whereas transferring these funds from the 2022 budget to the 2023 budget would allow for the completion of these projects without needing additional monies from the general fund for future budgets. And whereas it is the best interest of Trempealeau County to carry the unused balances rather than levy additional money in 2023 for them. Now be it resolved that the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors has hereby authorized the carryover funds from the 2022 Child Support Agency budget to the 2023 Child Support Agency budget as follows: 101.54330.810 outlay, Laserfish project, $27,240.58 to be carried over into the same line item. Introduced by Law Enforcement Committee, Stacy Klein, Andy Todd, David Orsh, Dan Schreiner, Ron Johnson.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Schreiner, seconded by Mr. Todd. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Well, there was discussion on everybody else on this one. Okay, Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
David Orsh.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yes.
Don Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Dan Schreiner.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson?
Yes.
Bridget Turner?
Yes.
Stacy Klein?
Yes.
Richard Seixas?
Yes.
Lori Severson?
Yes.
Andy Todd?
Yes.
Heather Fritsch?
Yes.
17-0.
Okay. Going on, Audit Committee, members' claims.
Whereas the Audit Committee has audited the following claims and recommend that they be allowed as follows. John Austin, $1,231.65. Kevin Adams, $239.30. Robert Becker, $649.34. Heather Fritsch, $244.54. Ron Johnson, 0. Stacy Klein, $467.68. David Larson, $245.63. Dick Miller, $180.48. Kellen Nelson, $1,115.97. Jeannie Nutter, $348.36. David Orsh, $220.96. Richard Seixas, $336.24. Dan Schreiner, $676.42. Lori Severson, $100. Andy Todd, 0. Bridget Turner, $291.92. Dawn Waldera, $177.51. Total per diems, $5,025. Total expenses, $1,501. Grand total, $6,526. Even. Now be it resolved that the claims be allowed as shown. Introduced by Audit Committee, John Austin, Kellen Nelson, Andy Todd.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Johnson, seconded by Mr. Larson. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Heather Fritsch.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
David Orsh.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yes.
Dawn Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
You betcha.
Dan Schreiner.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seixas.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
17-0.
The next is appointment for Veteran Service Commission to succeed Andy Scraw, Tony Scraw. You have a letter in your packet there. You want to read the letter?
I can. In
Okay.
accordance with Wisconsin Statute, Section 45.81, parentheses 1, please appoint the following veteran to the Veteran Service Commission, VSC, for a 3-year term beginning January 1, 2023, to replace Anthony Scraw, who has graciously stepped down to allow other veterans a chance to serve the community. Mark A. Marsalik of Independence, Wisconsin. Mr. Marsalik served honorably in the United States Army from 1969 to 1971 as a military policeman. Following his military service, Mr. Marsalik continued serving his county as a city police officer in Independence, ultimately retiring from the police force. Aside from his professional service, Mark is also the commander of the Sura-Wirsgala American Legion Post 186 of Independence, Wisconsin. Mr. Marsalik would be a great addition to our Veteran Service Commission, and I recommend him for appointment. Sincerely, Steve Young, Trempealeau County Veteran Service Officer.
Looking for a motion to approve.
To approve.
Motion by Ms. Nutter, second by Mr. Schreiner. We just need a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. Committee reports, Civic Finance Budget Update and Sales Tax Update.
There, I think part of them were mailed out to you and part are on your desk. I also, to let the rest of the county board know, I made a copy of the ARPA funds, what you have designated so far and how much is undesignated, and how much the requests for that undesignated is.
We're just 10,600,000 short, so not a big deal.
Well, one of the things too would be that if you see the second one in the requests, and I don't know if, no, he's not on anymore, but Dave, one of the things is the broadband, the TCC county broadband is 3.6 million of that 10 million. If that could be part of this funding, broadband funding that will become available sometime.
Okay. Stacy, would you like to report on the CAP program? It's
Yep, so January 25th, I went down to the Capitol for the County Ambassador Program. And from what I understand, this is a program that was started several years ago through Wisconsin County Association, looking at, we send resolutions, we can send emails and call our representatives at the state, but that face-to-face meeting makes a much larger difference. So we had 4 initiatives. We had handouts that we give to our representatives, we schedule meetings, and then talk to them about our initiatives. So I'll go through the initiatives kind of quick. If you want more detailed information, I can get it to you. So the first one is the local government funding reform overall. Just to reference, like back in the 1980s, the state funding accounted for almost 50% of county resources. Now that's down to about 25%. There's also restrictions on what we can do as far as the state's revenue controls on counties are the most strict in the nation. So our proposal was to, actually Governor Evers had mentioned it the night before in his State of the State address, to allocate 20% of the state's sales tax to local government. So that was our ask. And then part of that was to devote a portion of these funds to direct county payments, and then another portion to innovation funds that would have financial incentives for county cooperation with the local governments, municipalities. So I was just going to add there, we all represent towns, villages. I know some of you are on your local boards, but if you haven't been involved with their meetings, certainly go there. I know they get excited about which committees we're on and how we're able to make a difference at the county for our constituents. So the second one of the 4 initiatives is the County General Transportation Aids, or GTA, and then also Road Improvement Program Discretionary Supplement, or LRIPS. The GTA, so that's just talking about the overall funding from the states, the limits on local property tax collections, the rising costs of delivery of state mandated services. You'll find that as a theme through a couple of our initiatives here, where it's a state statute that we provide these services, but then the state funding has reduced over time, and then we're restricted on how much we can tax. So that's delayed maintenance. Not going to go into too many details beyond the overall, but the LRIPs, those were started in the 2019-21 biennial budget, and it was supposed to be a one-time thing, but they're really popular. They're for shovel-ready projects. I know we've talked about how our highway commissioner has multiple projects ready to go, so this would be more funding for that. So that increased over time, and then our ask for those, and again, everyone is asking to be part of that $7 billion of surplus that the state has. But increasing the budget for GTA, and then also allocating additional monies from the surplus to the LRIPs. So that'd be $200 million there. We'll go on to the next one. So this is for victim witness reimbursement appropriation. Again, this is a state statute program that we have to provide. So it's services for children, families. So some examples are court appearance notification services, victim compensation, social services, escort, other transportation for the families. So let me get to, I know we all want to get out of here tonight, but this is funded in 2 ways: the crime victim and witness assistance surcharges, 3 ways: the delinquency victim and witness surcharge, and then the penalty surcharge. So it does depend on the money that's collected from the defendants, the people causing this. Numbers-wise, the state is supposed to reimburse counties up to 90%. For the 2021 year, we received 40%. So with that, supporting $12 million from the general purpose revenue, so that we can meet that 90% equivalent. And then the last one, mental health. Again, the night before, I was watching too many movies today. The Governor Evers had mentioned that 2023 is a year of mental health. So looking at two aspects here, and this portion is a bit more complicated. So if anybody wants to talk more about this, we can certainly do that. But looking at community support programs, so more on the preventative side, and then the crisis services. So again, those similar numbers we're seeing across all of these, where we've had these costs, they've increased over time, and our funding from the state over time has decreased. So the requested action there, again, from that general fund, the state provide $21 million annually to fund crisis services, and then $14 million annually to cover the county services programs. So we have 2 more meetings this year. I know one's in April. I think the other one is sometime in the summer. I was the only one that went down from the county this time. I know John wasn't able to because of a conflict, but I'm guessing they'll still take more volunteers because the more relationships we build, the better. So I met with Representative Trig Pranchinski in the morning, and then State Senator Jeff Smith that afternoon. Both meetings went really well. Kind of the general idea I got from them is that they just weren't aware of what's going on, or that it was to this extent. So they both agreed how important these are, and that we do need to get more money back to the local governments. And then just kind of on a tangent, because I was the 4th CAP member to meet with Senator Smith, we went through the highlights of this, and then we actually talked more about the solar farm issues that we're seeing. So I know we've been in contact, like you're on the solar committee, and some good resources there. So that's being looked at not just at a county level, but statewide level as well. But I think that was the overall gist of what had gone on. So does anybody have any questions about any of that? Or if anybody wants to volunteer? It's later April. Yeah, I was going to write down
I can let you know.
Yeah.
I can let you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to think you did a good job.
Oh, thanks.
Good report, too.
Yeah, thank you.
Correspondence.
I
A
forgot
letter
about that.
regarding resolution supporting increased compensation for district's attorneys.
That was a very short, I have it in your packets, but it was from this Carl Wojtakaitis, who is the Northeast Wisconsin Regional Director of the Office of the Governor, and just says that, because we did send that resolution about the increased compensation for assistant district attorneys. It has been received and will be taken into consideration. That's it. And thank you for your service. So.
Did it say auto reply on it?
It said, no, it's personally to Paul Severson, it says. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, but I'm sure it's a group email.
Okay, item 10, instruct the clerk to pay mileage and per diem. Motion by Ms. Turner, second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, call the roll.
Jeannie Nutter.
Oh, yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner. Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seixo. Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Heather Fritsch.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
David Orsh.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yes.
Don Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes, sir.
Dan Schreiner.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
17-0.
With that, we can adjourn at 9:03.